Welcome to Mixed Media. We are a live podcast, live stream starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Friday night. And basically, the three of us talk about our respective art fields and, generally art in society. And today, if you watched the earlier segment or you're watching live, we are doing something which we did 2 weeks ago, which is pretty popular, and I know we had a lot of fun with it, where we basically found some art that we enjoyed on Reddit or other spaces on the internet and are kind of offering our thoughts on it and kind of reviewing it. Yeah, that's who we are. So the piece I want to look at is a piece I found on Reddit called Fantasy for Orchestra. This person had a couple of pieces they put up recently, but I chose this one. It's an interesting 12-minute long piece. Irving, do you want to play a little bit of it?
Sure. Scott is here.
Oh, well, hello, Scott. So yeah, we're gonna start with just playing a little bit of your piece. Not gonna go through all 12 minutes, but just to give our audience a sense of this piece.
Do you want me to start anywhere, or?
I think probably just start at the beginning, unless you have somewhere else you'd like us to start, Scott.
Yeah, I'm gonna start from the beginning from now. By the way, Scott, we have a Discord in the link in the description. You should hop on there because we have a growing art community. So yeah, let me start.
You can probably stop there.
Cool. Awesome. I thought that was pretty coul.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Okay.
Out
So,
of curiosity, sorry, before you start, I was wondering, Scott, if you could tell us if who your inspirations are, music-wise, like composers and whatnot.
all right. So John Williams, romantic composers. Yeah, that makes sense to me. What I noticed, first thing that kind of stood out to me about this piece, most of your stuff I think is on our classical music, and last time I was looking at music from mostly from our composer. So there's maybe a little bit of different crowd, the kind of composers who are posting on those two channels. So there was certainly some similarities. I'll say that, relative to like most of the stuff that I found, and I again listened to a lot of different things. Your piece, well, all the pieces of yours that you posted, not just this one, kind of stood out to me because a lot of the stuff that I see and hear on these various Reddit channels, the composers tend to generally not have such a great sense of I talked about last time, kind of dividing orchestration into orchestration and instrumentation. And if anyone who didn't watch the last show, I consider instrumentation like the writing, kind of a horizontal aspect, writing for one instrument. Is it this line from here to here playable and characteristic, idiomatic for the instrument? And then orchestration is kind of the vertical aspect, like how do I line up colors and balances within like one, given note, whole orchestra. And I find that a lot of music that I see and hear on these various Reddit channels that I explored, a lot of instrumentation problems. And if you don't have instrumentation, you definitely can't have good orchestration. And your piece definitely is not like that. We have not only good instrumentation, but really great orchestration overall. I'm kind of a really big fan of two things in music, and obviously melody. I think everybody would say that, but I'm a really huge fan of color, orchestral color. And if anyone who's been watching our show from the past probably almost half a year now. I don't remember exactly when we started, but I talk a lot about orchestral color. And, in case that term itself is not clear to someone who's not a musician, just listen to this piece that, what we were just listening to. And that is a great example of orchestral color. And there's some other things too. You could kind of say that it's an exploration of kind of chordal color to more than like a chord progression, especially towards the end. I think it's less of like functional harmony, more of just, non-functional harmony that's there for its sound. But just the way you're combining the instruments, you have such a great understanding of trying to produce a particular kind of sound color and varying it, and how to achieve that, which is really fantastic to see. It's something I did not find in a lot of these pieces that I was listening to, and you really have such a great, well-developed sense of that. I'm going to assume, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, I'm going to assume that you have some training in orchestration and just composition in general, because, it's really, you can obviously self-study your way into that as well, but that's kind of hard to do. I would say if you're just kind of doing it all by yourself, and you're not gonna luck into those orchestral colors. So yeah, you have, like I said, you have this great sense of how to create these different colors, and you're doing it at the same time as giving us something melodic, because it's easy to be really atmospheric and colorful and not have something melodic to kind of lash onto. And you give us both of those things, which is kind of a mark of even going beyond just being a skilled orchestrator. That's really what I listen for in all the greatest music, both melody and great colors along with that melody. Yeah, and there's some really great stuff. So you studied some private orchestration studies. Yeah, that's great. Definitely is paid off in your music, I would say. So a couple of things. I don't know whether you're going for like a space-ish feel with this, The visuals on the video kind of suggest that, but the music itself also suggests that. So I don't know whether that's intentional or not. To me, it sounds sort of like we're in this kind of, outer space exploration-ish kind of world. It reminds me a little bit of his piece that I played. I don't think it was the actual world premiere. It was the maybe like the second performance of it, called Cosmic Dust, which was music to accompany like a bunch of images from the Hubble Space Telescope. It definitely had some element of that, and I think you're aided in that by just your color choices, and then your overall texture is kind of empty. It does get fuller, but a lot of it's kind of fewer instruments, and you kind of feel that like aural gap, and then just generally kind of the restrained use of the strings, I would say, and the percussion. So not necessarily about space, but
Yeah,
I think
quite.
it certainly matches that visual that you put up there, whether that's intentional or not. It sort of sounds in that world. And there are a lot of, like, you mentioned Williams being an influence. Like, if you just, there's a lot of that sort of empty music in places like Hoth, or just in general, lots of like starscapes of his. And I've talked to about how Williams is also getting some of those emptier landscapes from people like Vaughan Williams and Vaughan Williams' Seventh Symphony. So kind of fits in that. There are other moments that really remind me of, maybe I've just been listening to too much Sir Arnold Bax recently, but there are some moments in there that kind of remind me of his melodic choices, I'd say, in something like Tintagel, which is, if you listen, I highly recommend that you look, and everyone out there, look up Sir Arnold Bax, really underrated British composer, and his piece Tintagel is fantastic. All of his, pretty much most of his stuff is really great, but Tintagel in particular is probably his masterpiece. If you listen to it, you'll probably think that you're like, I'm crazy, because like this is very much the opposite of Tintagel in terms of texture and color. But I think there's certain ways that he like handles melodic stuff that reminds me of what you're doing, or you remind me what he was doing. So I don't know. There's certainly, I think, a sense of danger in there too throughout, and just, I don't know, overall, you were kind of getting out of like literal, discussion of music, but just my overall impression is kind of a sense of like being lost a little bit, and kind of some sense of kind of exploration and danger, but certainly resolving itself at the end. So I know you mentioned that, this is written during lockdown. You kind of represent the virus itself. So kind of makes sense, being adrift in the middle of 2020. One thing I think that could make this piece improve a little bit is the overall arc of it. And, so you're doing a really great job, which another thing that I talked about in the last Reddit review session episode, where, sometimes it's hard to, like, when you have a thematic idea, how do you like develop it, and how do you kind of have it keep returning and not just have like a through composed piece? You do a really good job of taking your main idea, and it's great because it's so simple and so recognizable, and kind of developing it and bringing it back, and so it has an arc. But I think overall, it's sort of, the first 4 minutes are great. There's definitely an arc. We're kind of building, and there's some really, really great stuff, kind of grow at like around 3:20, I'd say, the stuff at about 4:25-ish, roughly the time on the YouTube video. That's really cool. We kind of get this like, spiky, not really jazzy, but like kind of sort of like jazz-like feel with the woodwinds and percussion. That's really cool. But I feel like after that section ends, the piece is a little bit flat in terms of its trajectory. So we've done like a great job kind of building up to something, and we've maintained a lot of interest. And thereafter, like, I feel like even though we get kind of louder and softer at points, I feel like some of the tension in that middle section, as we're kind of heading towards the end, I found my attention kind of sagging a little bit. I just, so you might want think a little bit about how to, in a longer piece like this, how to kind of maintain momentum. And it doesn't just have to be like, we're going to keep getting more and more, exciting, build up to higher and higher climax. That's kind of like the Marvel, superhero mold of like filmmaking. If we've talked a lot about like that kind of narrative structure. We'd have to keep making the stakes higher. You don't need to do that. But I felt like, some of it in that middle just was kind of felt a little bit flat. I think some of that too is because of handling of dynamics, which I don't think is necessarily like an intentional thing. It's not what it didn't sound, the dynamics, especially there, weren't quite as natural, where we kind of have like, fuller texture, and that in real life it would be really loud, and then we go from like, big brass stabs, and then like one woodwind, an oboe or something, and it's kind of equally as loud. Even if you want that, if this were being performed live, even if you want the oboe player to play that note really loudly, it's going to come down in volume. And some of that also might be with like YouTube compression too. But in the music that we have, the sound that we have, it's pretty much the same volume as the brass. And there's a lot of moments like that where I think if you try to in your mock-up to have a little bit more like naturalistic kind of volume, that would help create more of that arc and a little bit more interest. I think also some of that interest could come from maybe a little bit more like overt development of the melody. I think you certainly are developing it, but it seems like the melody is more just in that section kind of just sprinkled throughout, instead of kind of receiving some sort of development, or maybe introduce some other kind of dominant theme, secondary theme. I don't mean dominant like in terms of pitch, but like secondary idea that kind of is introduced there. So those are just some things that might help the overall arc of the piece, narrative arc of the piece. And then one thing also that I noticed is that sometimes you have these textures, especially with like mostly where we have strings and a woodwind playing, and the woodwind is kind of as loud as the strings, and you can get that in real life, and but obviously it's much easier to get that with virtual instruments than it is in real life, because if you really want that kind of balance, you're gonna have to have the strings play much softer and the woodwind play really loudly. Otherwise, woodwind is kind of going to blend in and sort of be more of like a adding color, but not be quite as powerful as the strings. So it's much harder to achieve that in real life. And if you want that effect for like the woodwind on top of the strings to be as loud, just know you're gonna have to really have them marked up really high if they're dynamic, and the strings marked down a lot. Computer will mask that, obviously, because you can tell the computer do anything you want. Overall, some really great stuff. I just love that you're doing so much with the woodwinds and the percussion, and like not overriding with the strings. That's another thing that's kind of, I'd say, fairly uncommon amongst pieces of it I've seen on Reddit. Really good handling of percussion and all those percussion colors. That includes the piano and harp, and then tying that in with the woodwinds. It's kind of not a terribly common color choice, and it works really well. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I'd say, again, keep playing with those colors. I did, like I said, I listened to the other pieces you put on Reddit, and again, you have that really great sense of orchestral color. So that but keep playing with those and keep developing that. Yeah, just think about ways that you can kind of increase momentum in a longer piece. And this is a relatively longer piece. It's good, but it's kept to a manageable size. It's not like you see a lot of people on there like, I wrote a symphony and I've never written anything before, but here's 40 minutes of music, and you're like, no, that's you're not going to maintain anything for 40 minutes if you've never written anything before. So this is like a manageable size, but it still tends to need something that's going to propel the narrative instead of just like one short idea. And you're definitely like on your way to do that. Just think about ways that you can, the middle doesn't sag quite as much. Yeah. So, and then like I said, some of those things about dynamics and like dynamic contrast, naturalistic dynamic contrast, which I think will also help with that narrative arc in the middle.
Any man who likes John Williams is a man that Ben can sympathize with, I think.
Absolutely. He's the master of orchestral writing over the past 50 years. I don't think anybody in any kind of, not just the film world, but I don't think any classical composers, match up to him in the past 50 years.
Yeah. Strong statements.
Yeah, let's say bold statement.
And that's it. There are a lot of fantastic composers right now, but he does. Yes. Conrad Pope is great. I don't know if you are on Facebook, but Conrad Pope's orchestration page on Facebook is another great orchestration resource. It's not quite as active as something like Orchestration Online, but if you want to hear some stuff from observations from Conrad Pope himself, that's something to check out if you haven't already. Conrad Pope is, for anyone who doesn't know, one of Williams' probably main orchestrator over probably from like the 90s to today. He had some other people like Herb Alpert in the earlier part of his career who were also fantastic orchestrators who are really responsible for helping bring about the sound of Star Wars. Although they all say that they don't do nearly as much work as orchestrators for orchestrating for other composers, because Williams tends to write so much, kind of writes out what instruments he wants playing what, and their job is mostly to like balance it and figure out like dovetailing and stuff. But obviously I think they have more influence and impact than they give themselves credit for. Oh, William Ross too. Yeah
Are orchestrators at all like very well, I feel like they're not very well appreciated, like like, I mean, I'm not in this world, so I wouldn't know how much appreciation they do get or not, but
very little outside of the actual community that actually brings you scores to life. Within that little community, the orchestrators are very important. Shirley Walker. Yep. Do you like tend to study a lot of film orchestration, because you've got a lot of good names. And these are, some big names here that are not necessarily familiar to the average listener. Okay, yeah. So definitely keep looking at film orchestration, and again, that's also why we need. I've made this rant several times, but why we need more film scores being published, because that's also the best way to like look at these details. Obviously, you can listen for them, but you want to see, exact orchestration choices that aren't like apparent to your ear. That's why we need these more film scores to be published, especially John Williams, which I know Hal Leonard will never let happen. Disney will never let happen. But hopefully one day we get to see some real John Williams scores, not just the signature editions.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah, Scott, if you want to join us in the Discord, I don't know if you're there already, but we'd love to have you there. The link is in the description. Nathan will Nathan's about to speak. I will drop you a link in the chat to our Discord. We have like a community of people, a lot of musicians actually in the Discord. We just got a music submission. Yeah. So if you have any future stuff you want to shoot us a direct message on, or shoot Ben a direct message on, whatever, join our Discord in the description.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me look at and talk about your piece. Really great stuff. Keep up the good work.
Any news or industry?
Any news in the music world?
I don't know. Nothing that I'm really aware of, other than I guess Disney announced yesterday that they're making a season 2 of Bad Batch, so we get some more Kevin Kiner.
Awesome. Yeah. So is that it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, thank you so much for watching. If you've stuck around the stream for this long, you are the real one. Why not join us on Discord is my next question. Link is in the description. Pop It community. We're going to be chatting all week, amongst each other about stuff that's happening in film, media, gaming, music, literally anything. We'd like to have more people who have a little more diversity in the arts that they occupy. So if you're a painter, whatever, ballet dancer, right? Get in the Discord and speak about your art. We want to hear it and we want to share with each other. Last thing I'll say is if you like this podcast, if you enjoy the fact that we review other people's stuff and chat with them and whatever, leave us a comment to tell us what you like or don't like and hit the like or dislike button. If you really don't like it that much, at least hit the dislike button so that I can know, so we can know what we should do, that we should be doing better and striving for more. So with that said, I'll wish you guys a good week.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.